Good afternoon and welcome to the first Treaty Talk podcast of the year. Uh, I'm your host, Jack Neville, as always, and I'm delighted to join by Matt O'Callaghan for the first time in 2022. It's been a very, very busy January so far. We're only 20 days in and we've seen the Limerick senior hurlers and footballers in action. We've had colleges, schools, club championships. So do stay tuned as we look back at all that and look forward to this weekend's Munster Hurling Cup Final.
Impression of the game you get out with what you put into. It's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
But not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well done, Shawnee Buckley. To do that to Tomas O'Shea, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the word go today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left? We have a couple of injuries. Here comes Kieran Curry. Curry leading the charge of the right brigade. 45 metres out. He's a chance to score. He's put it high.
There's no sympathy in this game for anybody.
Well, Matt, 20 days in, I suppose, a world of sport we've had so far this year. It's like we were never away.
Yeah, it is, Jack. I suppose Happy New Year to all our listeners.
I should have said that, I suppose, yeah. I echo that sentiment.
All our viewers. It's like we're only 3 weeks in and so much has happened in that 3 weeks. Despite the restrictions and despite the lockdown and our semi-lockdown or whatever you like to call it. But thankfully, there's good news coming up, possibly later today, I understand, in that front. But like it is really all systems go. This weekend, as you know, Jack, we're down to the finals of the pre-season competitions, the Munster Senior Hurling Cup and the McGrath Cup Final, and substantial progress has been made in the Sigerson Cup, and that UL have already reached the quarter-final, having played 2 rounds, and the Sigerson Cup is up and running. We're down to the semi-finals of the Harty Cup and the colleges in the colleges competitions, and a lot of that has taken place since the turn of the year. So it has been a very, very busy couple of weeks. But thankfully, I suppose, Jack, if there's, it has been helped, I suppose, in no little way by we have reasonably good weather. Last weekend and this weekend, or today so far, and I think the forecast isn't too bad for the weekend. So, Limerick and Clare played last weekend in the Gaelic grounds, and it was. It would be probably stretching it to say it was summer-like conditions, but it was extraordinarily good conditions for this time of the year, which is a help, and great progress has been made in the competitions. And the big thing, I suppose, is that the competitions are back. This time, 12 months, all the competitions that I've spoken about there now, about the pre-season, the colleges, and the third level colleges and the second level colleges. We had none of those last year, Jack.
Yeah,
so
you don't kind of realize that they were gone.
Long way.
Yeah, we have. You wouldn't realize how much you'd miss them till they're back. I was in Mary on Wednesday and I was in UL last night. And just a great buzz around the place with the Fitzgibbon Cup and obviously around the schools. With our school reach, the local representatives left in the competition. But we'll start with the hurling. It's the big game of the weekend to look forward to. But I suppose before we get into the final with Clare, the game against Kerry, I suppose facile in the end is a word that's been used. 429 to 11 points. Probably didn't do much for Kerry really as a whole after beating Tipperary. But from a Limerick point of view, Matt, the ease at which the newer lads, the younger lads, some of the older lads just fit in seamlessly, play the same way, the same system through the lines. We had 6 players that weren't there last year for varying reasons. Rory Duff made his full debut. Adam English and Patrick Donovan were both teenagers. Both came off the bench for their debut. Paddy O'Loughlin and Oisin O'Reilly were back in a green jersey, and so was Dave McCarthy. And it's hard to imagine that you'd put up 429 with Barry Nash, the only member of last year's All-Ireland winning team, to start. But that's exactly what Limerick did. It just shows that they're not finished yet, this Limerick side. They're determined to keep this going.
Yeah, and we've heard over the years since he acceded to the throne, as it were, since he became Limerick's manager, John Kiley referencing the process and the process working, and it's obviously that the process works from number 1 to 36 or 37 or however many is on the panel. Look, it was a non-event, if you like, Jack. I think in the lead up to the game now, Limerick are only back 2 weeks or whatever, 2.5 weeks now. John Kiley, I suppose, if he was anticipating, he would have anticipated a game against Tipperary in the semi-final when the draw was made, and how much that changed his calculations and his approach to the semi-final, one just doesn't know. But certainly it was an opportunity to give a lot of fringe players and a lot of players that as you said, that were coming back, that had played before with Limerick, but the like of Paddy O'Loughlin and the like of David McCarthy possibly, and I don't think David had played competitive before. He'd played definitely in the challenge games and that sort of thing, and it was particularly nice to see debuts for Rory Duff, Adam English, and Patrick O'Donovan, and so heartening, Jack, to see these young lads, the way they fitted into the system, seamlessly fitted into the system, and the type of performance that they put on was fantastic. Adam English got a goal. Patrick O'Donovan set up a goal. You can't ask for any more from 19-year-olds that are coming in, and certainly that they're two players with a huge future. But I suppose, Jack, when we talk about those two particular players, on Sunday last, they didn't tell us anything that we didn't already know. Because those two players, in my opinion and in your opinion, as we have discussed many times in this cast, are destined for greatness and are destined to get to the top. And maybe they're probably getting there, maybe on the road there, on the first step of the ladder there, a little bit quicker than we thought. But certainly it was a great start for the two of them, and a great game for Rory Duff to get under his belt and on his first outing with the county. And you saw Brian O'Grady coming back, getting game time and the like of that. That's all so encouraging.
Yeah, it was very encouraging. And I suppose for Adam English and Patrick Donovan, as when they came on in the inside forward line, they'll know that Peter Casey's out injured at the moment. He's probably ready-made replacement. Graham Mulcahy is with Kilmallock, so he'll probably get a break. And Barry Murphy, then, who would have been the next man in, is injured as well. So there is a chance. But I thought Pat Ryan definitely stood out on the day. Another, I'll be going for that kind of position. I just picked out 4. I thought Pat Ryan, Colin Coughlin, Rich English, and Dave Reedy were really stand out, I suppose. Bar Coughlin, they've all been tipping around the panel for a long while. Coughlin, it's kind of hard to believe that he's only his second year, but just on David Reedy at centre forward, which we know is such a crucial position for this Limerick team. It's where Keith Lynch plays. He's Hurler of the Year there for a reason, and 2-time All-Star at centre forward. But I thought David Reedy was just exceptional. Adds so much to the game. I suppose when he first came on the scene, he was seen as a scorer, but now he's facilitating. It just gives a lot of hope to Limerick, and I suppose it's a worry to other teams that if one of the frontline players goes down, that there's so many coming through.
It is, and again, and we've spoken about it, and I suppose John Kiley has spoken about the impact of his bench and all that sort of thing. David Reedy was only a sub in the All-Ireland final, and to have that type of ammunition in the locker, and somebody with the type of firepower that he has to come on, it is absolutely frightening, because dare I say, that I would imagine that in any other county at the minute, that David Reedy would probably be one of the first names on the team sheet.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of Limerick lads on the bench that would be definitely guaranteed starters for other sides in Ireland.
Absolutely, but again, like we spoke about Patrick O'Donovan and Adam English and not being surprised at their progression. David Reedy doesn't surprise me at all, Jack. I have been watching him through at underage level. I've been watching him with colleges in which he was absolutely outstanding with Charleville CBS and was one of the main reasons why they reached the Harty Cup Final. With his club Drummond Atlaka, like him, his consistency is absolutely phenomenal over the years. Like I would rate David Reedy extremely highly, and as I said, it's indicative of where Limerick are and why they're All-Ireland champions 3 times in the last 4 years, when a player like David Reedy can't get in on a regular starting spot.
Yeah, I suppose for Limerick, it's a luxury to have Reedy in the bench. Now, I'm sure himself he'd love to be starting and would hate to be called a super sub, but that's probably what he is at the moment. But there's nothing to say that he won't break into that panel, and I think Colin Coughlin is another one that is going to push all the way. And Rich English had the jersey for a while last year, and he showed what he had it. We have a comment in here, Matt, and I suppose for anyone watching live, feel free to get your comments in, questions or opinions or anything, or you can message us during the week and we can touch on that. I know that's what a lot of people do and want to hear certain questions being answered, so feel free to get involved. Adrian Kelly sent in a nice message there, Matt, wishing us a happy new year. So happy new year to Adrian and all listening. But he's wondering, we saw the lineup against Clare or against Kerry was fairly experimental. Now, we'd seen most players already, but there was only one from last All-Ireland final. Would you go for a similar lineup now? There's a share of that team that played at the weekend, and they played Fitz during the week. You had the 2 Boylans playing for UCC. Ron Connolly was with them as well. Rory Duff and Brian O'Grady were playing for UL last night. So how would you go about it if you were in John Kelly's shoes, Matt?
Yeah, Adrian, happy new year to you, Adrian. He makes a very valid point, and he asks a very, very important question. And my answer to the question would be that I would stick probably as near as possible as I could with the team to play to play Clare, because his point is absolutely valid. To see how they would fare against tougher opposition, because if there's one thing in looking at the teams in the competition so far, Tipperary fielded a team basically of unknowns, I think, with the exception of Paddy Cadell maybe, or and Willie Connors. I think there was just 2 or 3 players that had Waterford to the same degree, mainly an experimental team. You would have to say Limerick only fielding one of their All-Ireland, only 2 of their 17 All-Stars at their disposal. That was a shadow team, or a development team. But Clare seemed to have gone down the road of fielding a pretty strong side, Jack. And now, how strong are Clare without Tony Kelly is another question, because Tony Kelly is not involved due to injury, unfortunately. So Clare are going to be much tougher, and I think Adrian's point is valid. Because we can wax lyrical all day about the performance and scoring 429 against Cavan or against Kerry, but really the litmus test of the players would be how will they fare against tougher opposition. And I think this is the opportunity, and I think John Kiley will probably avail of the opportunity to give quite a lot of them, of the team that played Kerry, an awful some more game time. Now, we know in the past, and in his post-match interview after the Kerry game, John Kiley was at pains to stress the importance of players playing in the Fitzgibbon Cup. The importance as an ex-Fitzgibbon Cup player himself, he knows, I suppose, full well what the value of the Fitzgibbon Cup is, and we have quite a few players that were involved against Kerry that are involved with their team, with their college teams, like Ronan Connolly and Conor Boylan and Jerome Boylan. They're all starters with UCC. So whether we expect to see those out, or whether they will get further game time, I don't know. We have learned in the past, Jack, that it is a hazardous business to be trying to second guess the mind of John Kiley.
Yeah, it's hazardous enough, and he's very rarely, if ever, he's been wrong. So it is interesting.
That's what that point I was going to add. But whatever decision John Kiley will make, Jack, I've said it many times in this podcast, it'll be the right one.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, do we get in the All-Ireland contingent to make way for those playing Fitz, or will the lads playing Fitz be playing again? I know Brian O'Grady was taken off after about 35 minutes last night. Rory Duff, when he came on at half-time. Conor Boylan, I'm fairly sure, came off the other day. Jerome Boylan stayed on the whole game, so he's played a full game. But it'll be interesting to see, but I'm sure these are all high-level athletes, Matt. They're well able for 2 games in a week. But I suppose on Clare, it's probably been a while since they won a bit of silverware. You'd imagine it's a bigger game for them just to kind of maybe try and get one over Limerick. But we have Cusack Park is a hard place to go, as Limerick learned in the last few years. That we drew there in 19, but the loss in 18 will still ring heavy in the mind, I think, for some of these Limerick players. And it'll be an intriguing game.
You're right. There's no doubt about it. It rankles, and you know, a subplot to this whole game on Sunday, Jack, is that it's the first of 3 games between Clare and Limerick, all in Innis.
Yeah.
You know, we travelled there in the league and we travelled there in the championship. So how much will Limerick want to put down a marker? And how much games are going to be played, let's say, with bigger fish to fry down the road.
Yeah.
In harping back to Adrian's question, I honestly think that John Kiley will go with something like more of the same.
Yeah, and I think John Kiley's maybe mantra has been that once a fella gets a jersey, it's his to lose, essentially. And no one deserves to lose the jersey after last Sunday's performance. But it's good to have a final to look forward to, that these lads will know what it's like to play a senior final so far, because it has been very tried and trusted when we have got to the latter stages of that Ireland Championships and even the Munster Championship. There's probably 18 or 19 players that are used very regularly in those games. But we have the league to come up anyway in a fortnight's time after the game, Wexford first in Wexford. So we'll have plenty of time to talk about that, Matt. We won't dwell too much on the game, but I won't.
Jack, your point about Clare requiring silverware is very, very valid, because it's not too long ago when we would have given our right hand to win the Waterford Crystal Trophy, as it was known then, and we won it one night in Mallow. We beat Cork, and there was a great whoosal about it. And to such a big trophy, you'd need a wagon to bring it home. But you know, it was a landmark for Limerick to pick up senior silverware. So there will be that element of importance to it, and you're right when you're talking about the importance of it to Clare. It's far more important to Clare than it is to Limerick on Sunday. Make no mistake whatsoever about it, Jack.
Yeah, I suppose just to try and get one over Limerick. I think that's what every team is looking to do, is to try and get one over on Limerick. And I suppose teams would have been hopeful that maybe Kerry could have caused another shock and put some doubt into the mind of the Limerick contingent, but they brought back down to earth fairly quickly. Adrian's after playing there, so I'll read that before we go on. I'll try and get this off here. I'd agree and go similar team if at all possible. Be good for these lads to get experience of playing in Cusack Park in front of a decent sized crowd as well. He's very right there, Adrian. I suppose the only thing is that there's only 5,000 allowed into the game, sold out within 55 minutes, which is fair going for a game in early.
I'm just wondering, Jack. In that context, I think I was listening to the Taoiseach there earlier on, and was it on the news or something, saying that some of these restrictions might be lifted with immediate effect.
That is the hope.
Were that to happen, it would mean that there would be a bigger crowd there. But the other side of the coin is, if it's restricted to 5,000 like it was in Limerick, Cusack Park is far more compact than the Gaelic grounds.
Yeah.
So, there will be the sense of a big crowd there.
And there was a good atmosphere in Limerick, even though it was only 10% full if it takes the bones of 50,000, whereas Ennis takes 19, I think. So it'll be a quarter full. So, but hopefully that comes 6 o'clock, if you're watching this afterwards, that you will have got your ticket. Munster GAA, I'd say, if it goes on sale again, could have a problem with the website going down, because there'll be huge traffic of people wanting to watch the game. But look, it's going to be streamed live by Sport Limerick's sister company, Stream Sport Ireland. So look, if you didn't get a ticket, you'll still be able to watch the game from 2 o'clock on Sunday. But if you were to call it, Matt, with Limerick, I suppose repeat the trick of 2018 when they beat Clare to final, or can Clare get that bit of silverware?
Well, it's a very dangerous thing to do, to predict against Limerick.
No. That being said,
and forgive me for having green mist so early in January, Jack, but that's the way it is. So I'm going for Limerick to do the business.
I don't think anyone ever doubted you to go against Limerick in any sort of game, but you'd have to fancy Limerick, even though they'll be largely probably second string. But I suppose it's unfair to call any of the players we mentioned second string, because they're just so
they're not,
talented.
They're frontline players in any other county. They're frontline hurlers.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's just too many frontline hurlers in Limerick at the moment. That's the problem.
Yeah, I suppose a segue from the hurling, we'll stay on hurling for a minute, into the Fitzgibbon Cup. I think one man for Clare that, if he's playing at the weekend, showed what he's all about last night for UL. Mark Rogers at full forward it was free into UL, which is another thing about the Fitzgibbon Cup, is just the ease of access to these games. But if there was admission fee, Mark Rogers' performance alone would have worked at 3-1. All brilliant attacking finishes. Would have backed against him in most of them, but he's just so strong, brilliant in the air. Very like Adam Shanahan, but probably a bit quicker off his feet. Elsewhere, Sean Toomey from Cork, who Munger fans will be all too aware of, he was brilliant for Corsi Rovers in the Munster semi-final. He got a goal, so did Gerard O'Connor from Tip. But Brian O'Grady from Limerick showed what he's all about. He was brilliant for Limerick at the weekend and continued in that vein at midfield. Such a powerful runner, Matt, and he kind of a player you could play anywhere. I suppose at the same time, being from Limerick too was very disappointing, really.
He was the only Limerick. He was the only Limerick player on the UL team
starting
last night.
Yeah.
No, I've no doubt Mark Quinlan would have been on it had he been.
Yeah, and I would imagine I'm could be wrong, but I don't know if Rory Duff was around. Meant to be. I feel like he was going away in Erasmus or something this semester, but obviously he's staying around, so he could have been a late addition to the panel. There was a few more from around. Tipping around the squads, and there has been a fairly large Limerick representation, I suppose, for Toos as well. You had Cahill Downs, Michael Cremen, Owen Hurley, just to name a couple. But for Toos, it was very disappointing. But UL are always going to be strong in these competitions, just the sheer size of them. And obviously, I went to UL, so I'd be hopeful for them. But they've definitely laid out a marker, and scoring 530 in a game is no mean achievement, Matt, is it?
That's no mean achievement, no, and they're going to be a good side, like, and they're going to be one of the teams to beat. There's no question about it. But having looked at the panel and having gone more forensically through the panel than I had previously, before the start of the competition, like, UCC have an extremely strong panel.
Yeah,
and. I know, Jack, that you saw him against Mary I the other night, and like, it was only in the closing stages that they drew away for victory, and like there were 5 Limerick players starting. on that, which is a huge number down in UCC. Like you had the Boylan brothers, Jerome and Connor, Ronan Connolly, Kieran Barry from Ahan, and William Hen, who was college's leading scorer. And he was also college's leading scorer in the
Father Cannon Cup,
in the Cannon Michael O'Brien Cup. William Hen seems to be in good form at the moment. But college, when we were talking off air, Jack, you referenced the two big names from Cork that they were without. Niall O'Leary and Jack O'Connor, for whatever reason. So they're bound to be much stronger. But certainly UCC are going for 3 in a row, and I can remember back in my own day there many moons ago, like the one sporting holy grail in college at the start of the year was the Fitzgibbon Cup, and they've won it so often like that. That's it bears that out, and I suppose they've won it on a number of occasions, maybe when they mightn't be even the best team in it, but tradition took them over the line. But they play UCD now in the next round, so that'll be interesting.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting for Mary in the next round. They travel to NUIG. Obviously, they'll be against a very familiar face in the form of Keane Lynch, who was probably the difference for NUIG in beating UCD. A very close game that was streamed live. Obviously, Lynch helped Galway to the league title last week, but from what I saw from Mary, they definitely had the capabilities to beat UCC on the day. There was probably some erratic shooting. Quite early in the game, we'll say it was 10-all at half time. Very hard to pick between the sides. Shane Barrett got a brilliant goal for UCC straight after the half, worked from the throw in, and UCC probably got 4 or 5 ahead, and Mary probably panicked a small bit, and Jamie Wall in his interview afterwards said as much, and he thinks the winner is going to come from that group. And what I saw at the time, I was thinking that Mary could definitely beat NUIG. Now they need to do that to keep their hopes alive, but there's some fantastic hurlers in the team. From a Limerick point of view, Jason Gallan was playing between wing forward and full forward. He scored 2 from play and hit over a sideline that I'd say if he was on his own 21, it went over. It was an unbelievable sideline, but Jason was brilliant. Jim Ryan at centre back, who we might see for Clare at the weekend, was brilliant. Colin O'Brien from Cork is a huge man, a brilliant player. They've so many talents, Mary, and obviously in Jamie Wall, they've an expert in competition, so I wouldn't rule them out against Galway, but it's been a fascinating competition so far. It's
a fascinating competition, and it just tells you, Jack, about the randomness of the draw. Like when you have UCD, UCC, Mary and NUIG all pitted in. What is really the group of death? There's no doubt enough about it. Like you just think the 2 of those 4 are not going to be involved in the quarterfinals. That's the reality of it.
Yeah, I was saying to someone, should they be seeded? Because with all due respect to the group that involves UL, TUS and TUD, you would imagine that the 4 teams in Group A would probably beat everyone very well and would give UL a good game of it. So I suppose just the random nature of the draw, but you would imagine the best team will still be left standing at the end of it. UL are flying the Limerick flag. Mary need have their backs against the wall, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them come out of it. TUS with a win against TUD will more than likely come through, because you'd imagine if they're beating TUD that UL will do them a favour and win as well. But look, we'll be keeping an eye on the Fitzgibbon for the next couple of weeks while it's on. But I definitely would encourage anyone that can get out, I suppose, during the day if they're around, or even at night, to get these games. They're brilliant, free admission. Just the spectacle that you'll see inter-county standard hurling. But yeah, that's all we'll say on the Fitzgibbon. We'll keep moving through the colleges, Matt, and you referenced it at the start. UL are the only Limerick side in the Sigerson, which is the top tier football. We've seen them twice already now. They were very impressive the first night in UL against Sligo IT. David Clifford is obviously the main attraction. He got 1-5 the first day. I think he got 2-7 against.
Yeah,
Letterkenny.
I saw the game on stream against Letterkenny and
I suppose what you make of the dome, Matt. First of all, before we get into the game.
Yeah, I think it's a good concept. It's a good concept at this time of the year. Anyway, in particular, I don't know what it does for the atmosphere. I'm not so sure. It's very, very hard to judge it. That was the game that I saw. Now I didn't see. Now the Connacht FBD League. A lot of the games were played in it. And I'm not so sure how those went in terms of atmosphere at the games. And what is the capacity, Jack? I haven't probed into it that much, to be honest. Now,
there was 300 at the UL game, but I suppose that was a Tuesday afternoon, so it wouldn't be appealing to masses. But I couldn't put an actual figure on what it's like. But I know Paul Maher from Adair is the UL captain. I suppose we'll congratulate Paul for that, because it's no mean feat. Captain in UL, who probably have the bones of 15,000 students inside there. So well done to Paul. But he was talking to RTE and he was just saying that there was good atmosphere inside it. His only caveat was AstroTurf is very unforgiving, and you can't forget that it is an AstroTurf surface. It's not a football field that it's ideally said for the January months, January, February, March kind of, but it would be very tough on the body. But I just wanted to get your opinion on.
I would go along with what Paul Maher is saying there. And I'm only viewing the whole thing from a distance now. It certainly is a winter concept, Jack.
Yeah.
And I won't say a last resort concept, but there's nothing like playing games in the open pitches, and I know it removes the weather factor.
Yeah,
it removes the idea of a game of two halves, in that the wind isn't a factor.
It removes all variables essentially.
It does. So it's artificial turf, it's artificial conditions. So sometimes could you get an artificial result? I don't know.
Yeah, see, there's huge scores being scored. UL kicked 2-23, LYIT kicked 3-15. Like, that's serious scoring football. But football is going that way. But UL are definitely the team to beat so far in the Sigerson. The riches they have at their disposal.
And you mentioned Paul Maher there, and it's fantastic for Limerick to have the captain of a team that's going so well in the Sigerson Cup. But let's not forget, Jack, that we also have Declan Bruder, who is the manager from Newcastle West, and we have the Lavin brothers from Adair, Stephen and David, who are involved in the backroom team. So, like, there is considerable Limerick input into it. Now, I remember the days of Thomond College being involved in the Limerick Championship, and they won the Limerick Championship and won the All Ireland, and I think there was just one single Limerick player on the squad. Was only a sub, and there was every kind of resentment to it at the time back in the day, but there's serious Limerick input into this competition, into this particular UL team. When you have the three lads in the backroom team, you have Paul Maher there as manager, and I think isn't Ronan McGilligan from Munster involved as well.
Yeah, and John Hayes from St.
John Hayes of St. James,
injured at the moment, I think.
So, that is good for Limerick football, and hopefully UL will continue to progress. They're through now to the quarter final, which will be on in the weekend after next. Is it, or the week after next?
Yeah, I think it's the week after next, and the finals are on in Carlow IT. They'd be a weekend.
Yeah, I actually think the quarterfinals are on a Monday week, are they?
Yeah, I think they have provisionally down as Monday, so it'd be on that week. But their games so far have been Wednesday night and Tuesday afternoon, so I'd imagine they're probably going to be more midweek games. But yeah, we won't see UL for.
But I honestly think that UL haven't anything to fear going forward. Like you mentioned David Clifford, and you also have the new Kerry lad that the lad that came back from Australian rules, wasn't it? Stephen O'Cumber. And there were a couple of very good lads from Cork, like Sean Powter was one of the finest footballers in the country. From Cork, he's at centre half back. Like Chris Oak-Jones was in or around the Cork team there for the last couple of years. So, like, they've extremely good players. They've leaders in key positions. Powter is playing at centre back, as far as I know, and so like he's a fantastic footballer, that guy. And O'Connor is playing at midfield, where he's playing.
Yeah, we've only seen him briefly because he was obviously playing with Kerry in their win over Limerick, and we get onto that very soon. But his own club, Nagale, were busy winning Munster honours, so Stefan has only played probably the half an hour against Letterkenny. Outside of that, you've Owen McLaughlin from Mayo, who was definitely as good as Clifford last day. I know Clifford got 2-7, but Owen McLaughlin is just such a willing runner from halfback. Always gets forward, kicked a couple of scores. You've Donald O'Sullivan from Kerry. He's probably getting on to most other inter-county teams just from where he's from. Emmett Mahan from Clare the first night was exceptional. He's from Kildysor. He kicked 5 points. They've class all over the field. They're an inter-county team in all but name, this UL side. So it'll be very exciting from a local point of view, just to see how they keep going with a local man at the helm and a local man as captain, and a few more Limerick interests. So we'll keep an eye on UL, but they won't be in action the coming week. Either will the UL Hurlers. The Mary Hurlers are going down to Galway, and Toos are against Dublin. I'm fairly sure they're at home against Dublin next week. So we'll have another update on the Fitzgibbon and Sigerson next week. But while we're talking about football, Matt, suppose we can discuss the McGrath Cup for Limerick, for Billy Lee and his side. I suppose after a really, really positive 2020 that had a brilliant start in the McGrath Cup, it's disappointing in one sense that you had 2 losses from 2, especially, I suppose the Tipperary one probably hurt more, even though the Kerry one on scoreboard looks far worse. But Kerry are Kerry at the end of the day, and there is a gulf between the sides, and there's no two ways about that. But Tipperary are a team you want to be beaten, and Limerick looked like they were going to beat them for 70 minutes of the game, but for want of a better word, throw it away in the end will be disappointing for Billy Lee. But there was some positive signs from the McGrath Cup. What would you take from it?
Well, basically, I think you're right in what you're saying there, Jack, in that for 70 minutes against Tipperary, you practically had the perfect response to the defeat by Kerry. But it is quite obvious in that group this year that Kerry were on a different level.
Yeah.
Like they scored 123 against both Limerick and Tipperary. And
2 goals against us. There was 223.
Was it 223?
Yeah.
223, and they got 123 against Tipperary. And Tipperary scored 5 points and we scored 6. It will give you an idea of how serious Jack O'Connor is taking the McGrath Cup on his third coming. Now, they've never beaten Cork in a McGrath Cup final.
Oh, I didn't know that now.
So to do it on Sunday now, on Saturday, it's Saturday actually. It's tomorrow.
Saturday,
they'll be doing it for the first time, but they've taken the McGrath Cup very, very seriously. But Limerick can point again, I suppose, to the fact that they're down so many players from last year, and if we're benchmarking the Limerick team now and where they are, and I suppose the most valid comparison is where they were in the semi-final against Cork in the championship last year, and like there are so many players not available for various reasons, and I suppose the biggest problem of all for Billy Lee is that there are definitely 3 players who will not be available, and I'm talking about Danny Neville, who is abroad. Tom Childs, who is taking time out, and Brian Fanning, who is moved in his job to Dublin, isn't it?
Yeah.
So like they're letting 3 huge holes on not just the panel, Jack, but they were really regular starters now. And fullback is a very hard position to fill, Jack. And we really discovered on a fine fullback in Brian Fanning.
Yeah, we kind of had nearly agreed that he was Limerick's Player of the Year last year.
Absolutely, and Brian has been around the panel and been in different positions with Limerick footballers, but he certainly made the number 3 jersey his own, and he solved a major problem for Limerick. So that is going to leave a gaping hole at the back for Limerick. Now, obviously, the defeat to Kerry was disappointing. I suppose you wouldn't have expected to beat Kerry, particularly in Tralee. But if you were to maintain the progress of last year, you would certainly have expected a closer result. Now, the 3 players that I mentioned weren't the only 3 players that were missing. The frontline players like Ian Corbett didn't take part in the McGrath Cup, and we know what he brings to the table.
Yeah.
So he was a huge loss. And like the perfect response in terms of preparation for the league would have been a victory over Tipperary. And like for 70 minutes, it was on. And then in that injury time when the guy Kennedy was kicked over 2 points, to see it robbed from him was very, very disappointing. So Billy has quite a bit of work to do ahead of Sunday week now, believe it or not, Jack.
Yeah, it's coming around very
Saturday
quickly,
week. I think it's Saturday week, actually. I think the Longford game is on Saturday.
I'll just check there.
I know we'll be talking about it next week. But it's a huge game. It's a huge game because it is 7 games. It is a marathon, but by God, Jack, to survive in Division 3, you've got to be winning your home games at least. And Longford, I suppose, would be no disrespect to Longford, would probably be a team that Limerick would target as being a team that they could beat and possibly get the league campaign off to the ideal start. So Billy has quite a bit of work to do, and in since the game against Tipperary, but I've no doubt he'll knuckle down to it, and himself and his management team will have their best foot forward when Longford arrive in town. I think it's Saturday week, Jack.
Yeah, it is. And look, we'll talk about that game more next week. We'll be looking in depth into Limerick's game and more games as well, because we're going to be a week out from the start of the Hurling League. So that, but next week will be mainly football. I suppose this month as well, Matt, we have Harty Cup this weekend. Ardscoil Reach are playing Thurles CBS tomorrow. That's another game that's streamed live. You can get all these streams on Munster GAA. I suppose for Ardscoil, this campaign started in November. And I suppose for Ardscoil, these campaigns start in first year. I know from the likes of Liam Crone and Niall Moore and all them, these managers, they take them from first year right up to 6th year. And we had no Harty Cup last year. And I suppose Ardscoil Reach they won it in 14, 16 and 18. And we obviously had no competition, we'll say, in 2021. So they're kind of going for this will be every second year, hopefully, if they can win in 2022, bar that one in the middle. But they started with their campaign in November. They beat Nina 18-16. They got them into a quarter final where they beat Middleton CBS, who they played in the 2018 final. And Middleton were actually winners in 2019. So they have Thurles this Saturday, and De La Salle and St. Joseph's Tulla are in the other semi-final. We're used to seeing the likes of Ardscoil getting this far, but it's another indication for Limerick Hurling that there's a crop coming through. Like, you'll have players from Mungrath, Ballybrown, the Pearshig, all over the county representing Ardscoil Reach this Saturday, and another boost to Limerick.
Yeah, it is absolutely, and you would have to say that Ardscoil were outsiders when they were facing Middleton. in the quarter final, and they dug out a very, very good result. They're probably outsiders facing Thurles as well. Like Thurles are under the guidance of Doone's John Stokes, who has a fair track record now in colleges hurling, and they're going to provide Ardscoil with very, very, very formidable opposition. So it's going to be a tough game for Ardscoil, Jack. Make no mistake about that. But it's one that they can win, because they wouldn't, it's strange, Jack. Just looking at the Harty Cup now and looking at the success of Cork at underage level over the last 2 years between minor and under 20. There is no Cork College in the semi-finals.
Yeah.
It's Clare against Tipperary in one, and it's Waterford against Clare in the other. Which is unusual. The CBCs of this world, the Middleton CBS, St. Coleman's College, they're all gone.
Yeah, I suppose the big shock was St. Joseph's, that they beat CBC, who had got to 2 finals in a row, if not 3 finals in a row, and haven't made the breakthrough. And it's St. Joseph's Tulla and their first semi-final, if I'm right. So it's nice to see that the smaller schools, or with the schools with the less tradition, getting to these latter stages. I suppose it's not too long ago that Ardscoil Reach were making their first breakthrough and are one of the powerhouses in it now. So it's good to see that. I suppose I was mentioning clubs there a while ago. I suppose a special mention to Oisin O'Farrell from St. Senan's. He plays his hurling with a Skeeton. So best luck to Oisin. I don't know if we've ever had a player from our club play Harty Cup. So it's brilliant to see. So we wish them all the best luck. We'd love to see a Limerick school in the final. But I suppose this is all about promoting hurling in schools, lads playing hurling from a young age, and getting to play with players from different clubs and different areas, which they will be doing down the line with their inter-county side. So the best of luck to Ardscoil Reach. That's Saturday at 1 o'clock. Also, this
the actual we'll have a Limerick interest in the St. Joseph's Tulla and De La Salle game, as well, as in that the man in the middle is none other than Eamon Stapleton of Doon.
Oh yes, of course.
So we wish Eamon the best of luck in the game. He's doing a lot of college games.
Yeah, and I suppose I'll learn about referees. I suppose Jonathan Hayes was called up to the national panel since we last spoke to you. Jonathan is a brilliant referee and lovely fella outside the field. But on the field, he's a brilliant referee, and it's the recognition he deserves, because he's been at that high level now for a good few years. So the best of luck to him, and we'll be seeing him in bigger games down the line. But
Jack, from the very, very beginning, and I think we probably have mentioned it in this cast in the past, that I was of the opinion that Jonathan Hayes was destined for the top as a referee. I think he is a top class official, absolutely top class, first class.
Yeah, and to be fair to Jonathan, it's very rare that I've gone to a game in the Gaelic grounds he wasn't there in one way or another. And I'd say he probably watches a lot of games as well and learns from other referees as well. And you can really see it in his performances. And look, at the end of the day, you can't have a game without a ref. So the better refs we have, the better the games we'll have, most likely. We've also had the club championships this month, Matt, and I suppose we won't dwell on them because we'll be looking towards 2022 more so today. But it was disappointing for Limerick, to say the least. We had Kilmallock lost out heavily to Ballygunner. A Ballygunner side that, losing to Ballygunner is it's not. I suppose it's not it's disheartening, definitely disheartening. But Ballygunner are very, very borderline to a county team. They're exceptional. And Kilmallock didn't show up in the day. We can start with that one. Kilmallock weren't at the races, and still only lost by 12 points against probably the best team in Ireland. Now they'll play Slaughtneil, and if they win that, they'll have either St. Thomas's or Ballyhale. But for a Kilmallock point of view, will be very disappointing to have lost in the manner they lost. But overall, very good year for them.
Very good year for Kilmallock, I suppose, and I think Tony Considine referenced it in his post-match interview that had you offered them what they achieved last May, that they'd probably have bitten the hand off you. And but Kilmallock will be very, very disappointed. They'll be disappointed with their performance, Jack. And it was their fourth final appearance, and it was a new experience for them to lose a final
Yeah.
because they had won the previous three. So like they had a decent record in finals, and by coincidence, Jack, in the three previous finals, as by my recollection, they went in as outsiders. So going in as outsiders against Ballygunner was not a new place for Kilmallock to be in. So they'll be extremely disappointed with it and with the performance. And definitely it's something that we can say with absolute certainty is that Kilmallock did not show up on the day. Now that can be a cliche, but it is absolutely totally relevant in this case. Kilmallock it was a no-show performance. Now they started very brightly.
Yeah.
They had a couple of points on the board scarcely before, within 2 minutes of the restart. But unfortunately, that was the highlight of the game for Kilmallock.
That was as good as it got for Kilmallock.
Oh, it was certainly as good as it got for Kilmallock, and it was downhill after that, unfortunately. And certainly it was a most disappointing day, and I suppose by extension a disappointing day for Limerick Hurling. It was very, very difficult to see it coming because Kilmallock got into a vein of form when they reached the knockout stages after getting that escape with South Liberties in the quarter-final of the championship. They really stepped on the gas, as it were, in the semi-final against Doon and subsequently in the county final against Patrickswell. And one wondered, going into the Munster Championship with a layoff of 6 weeks and facing Cock of the Hoop Middleton, who were after winning that 12 Cork Championship, they made easy meat of Middleton. And they were in a relatively good place to challenge Ballygunner. And suddenly Ballygunner hadn't rooted up any trees on the way to the Munster final. Yes, they had won 8, Munster completed 8 Waterford championships in a row. Yes, they had beaten Ballyhay, but they struggled seriously against Drummond-Inch and needed extra time, wasn't it? Drummond-Inch was not Drummond-Inch. Lockmore Castellani. Lockmore Castellani. Sorry.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it was very, very hard to see it. It was very, very hard to see it coming.
I was just saying it like, it was the best teams like they just show up on the biggest stage. We saw Limerick against Cork saved their best for last. Ballygunner were the same, and look, losing to Ballygunner is nothing to be ashamed of. That was where I looked for a while ago. Very disheartening, but nothing to be ashamed of.
Disheartening and nothing to be ashamed of. Kilmallock have nothing to be ashamed of. They can hold their heads high. They won a good county championship. They won an unexpected county championship, and they'll be the first to admit that themselves. And they don't become a bad team overnight. And certainly things didn't go their way on the day. And like the loss of Micheál Houlihan after 20-odd minutes and the non-appearance of Philip O'Loughlin in the second half due to injury certainly did not help Kilmallock's cause.
No, there was a lot of factors, I suppose, that didn't go their way on the day. And that was the winning and losing the game. And that's that. I suppose it was a disappointing weekend. That weekend that the previous day, Newcastle West lost to Drummond-Inch in a Munster semi-final. Drummond-Inch are the defending champions. It finished 10-7, but Drummond-Inch went 5 points to no score ahead early on in the game, and that was the win and losing of the game. And also, Cappamore fell to Anrin in their Munster campaign. They lost 1-9-8. So I suppose it was very, very disappointing on the surface for those three Limerick sides in Munster action. But if you dig deeper, so we touched on Kilmarnock there, but obviously Newcastle a slow start, whereas Drummond-Inch had been playing. They just recently won last year's Munster competition, so they were obviously playing. And for Cappamore, a couple of missed chances on the day proved the winning and losing of the game. But overall, like it does show where Limerick are in terms of hurling. Obviously, we know, but in the camogie as well, from a club point of view, they're not that far away.
Yeah, it goes for the Limerick clubs in general, like, because we see how the two Limerick clubs fared, as you said. Newcastle West, practically, in fairness, Jack, did everything but win the game.
Yeah.
And from all accounts, Cappamore the same. And like, apart from Kilmallock, they are now reaching the Munster final. Like, McGrath were very, very unlucky in the hurling that they didn't reach the final.
Yeah.
Caroline were extremely unlucky that they didn't reach the final. So, like,
a lot of what ifs.
Limerick clubs in general have done pretty well now. In the football, maybe not as well as we would have liked, but Limerick clubs in general have done pretty well in the provincial competitions.
Yeah, they've done pretty well, and I suppose, look, they can take that as that they've had a game already in 2022, and it was a high competitive game, and they'll have that. It won't be much of an advantage by the time championships are played, but they'll have that game under their belt before they go back to train. And sometimes a loss can help with a bit of pep in your step. That after you win a county, you probably feel a bit invincible, and I suppose losing then in Munster just gives you more focus for the following year that you want to win Limerick that bit more badly to get out of Limerick to play a Munster Championship game. So look, commiserations to all the teams that lost, but everyone gave a good account of themselves. And at the end of the day, that's all you can do, because sometimes you just come up against the better side, and there's very little you can do about that, Matt.
And again, Jack, of course, it's great that we have the games back.
Yeah, brilliant. That is the main thing at the end of the day. Like, obviously, from a neutral point of view, that's all you want is games to go to and games to watch. And there's a huge streaming service out there at the moment, so you can watch them from the comfort of your home. If you don't feel like going outside, you can sit down in front of the fire with a cup of tea and watch the games. We've 57 minutes on the clock there, Matt. I think we've it all covered for the first episode.
Before we go, Jack, can we just pay tribute to Liam Lenihan?
Oh yes, of course.
Who completed his 3-year term as Munster Council chairperson last Saturday. Like, Liam was an excellent chairperson. He guided the Munster Council through a most unprecedentedly difficult period with the whole COVID thing, and did an excellent an excellent pair of hands, as we have come to realise over the years. Like, he was only the 4th Limerick chairman ever in the history of the Munster Council, and he's the first since Tom Boland in the early 90s. But he certainly did his county proud, and we wish him the very best in the future. And if there was a downside to Liam's tenure, it was that he didn't get the opportunity that his predecessors would have got to get around to meet more people in the province due to the lockdown and all that sort of thing. That would be the downside of it, because he certainly is a fantastic ambassador, not just for Limerick, but for our national games. He has given such service over the years. And of course, his tenure as Munster chairperson coincided with he having to present the Munster Championship trophy to Limerick 3 years in a row.
It was a good omen.
Which was a good omen. But let's hope now that Ger Ryan will get the opportunity to present it to a Limerick captain this year. Yeah, we wish Ger the best of luck as well. Ger Ryan has been he's been PRO in the past, and we would have been dealing with him, and he was an excellent PRO in that position, and I have no doubt Ger will make an excellent chairperson.
Yeah, I'll second that. Best of luck to Ger Ryan, his role, and a huge thanks to Liam for all he did for Munster GAA. And I'm sure Declan Hannon won't mind receiving the Munster Championship trophy off of Tipperary, man. I don't think he'll mind who he gets off, as long as Limerick are back there. But yeah, that's a wrap for our first podcast of the year. Things are coming around really quick and fast. We have obviously this weekend Arts in a Harty Cup semi-final. We've loads of Fitz games and Sigerson Cup games next week. We have Limerick in the Munster Hurling Cup Final this Sunday, and next week we've the return of the league. So buckle in. It's going to be hopefully a very busy year. It's looking positive.
Fasten the seatbelts, Jack.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be positive news this Friday evening with return of fans, going to games, etc. Restrictions should be lifted. So please God, we've been long enough waiting for good news like that, but we won't get ahead of ourselves. But as always, a huge thank you to you, Matt, for your wealth of knowledge and insights. Won't be long before we're back now. Looking forward to the league next week. For this weekend, we'll wish Ardscoilreash and Limerick the best of luck, and hopefully everyone has a nice weekend. As you said, the weather isn't too bad, so hopefully people can get out and do what they need to do. But until then, Matt, we'll talk soon, and thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Take care.
Impression again, we get out with what you put into. It's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
But not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well done, Johnny Buckley. To do that to Tommaso Sheahy, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the workout today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left? We have a couple of injuries. Here comes Kieran Carey. Carey leading the charge of the right brigade. 45 metres out. He's a chance to score. He's put it high. He's put it over.
There's no sympathy in